India is currently laying the groundwork for a massive architectural and political overhaul, expanding the physical footprint of its national legislature to an unprecedented scale. This expansion is legally bound by three intertwined bills recently passed by the government: the 131st Constitutional Amendment, the Delimitation Bill of 2026, and the Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam, commonly known as the Women's Reservation Bill. The stated objective of this legislative package is twofold: updating geographic representation using modern census data and guaranteeing a 33% seat reservation for women. To achieve this dual objective, the government claims there is a mandatory physical requirement. The Lok Sabha must be expanded from its current 543 seats to a maximum capacity of 850 seats. But altering the size of a national legislature by nearly 60% raises a critical question. Is this expansion an essential upgrade for a growing democracy, or is it an expensive political compromise? The decision to expand the parliament and explicitly delay the women's quota until after that expansion takes place is not an administrative coincidence. It is a highly calculated mathematical maneuver. By tying these three bills together, the government achieves three hidden objectives: protecting the seats of male incumbents, altering the federal balance of voting power, and masking a recurring multi-billion rupee drain on the public exchequer. To understand the delayed quota, look at this grid. 543 squares represent the Lok Sabha, with 74 occupied by women. An immediate 33% reservation requires setting aside 169 female seats. Within a fixed 543-seat House, male representation would therefore drop from 469 to 374. Enforcing a sudden loss of 95 seats creates internal resistance. Entrenched politicians do not willingly vote to abolish their own political territory. To bypass this resistance, the government opted for a delayed and expanded scenario, legally stipulating that the women's quota can only take effect after the total number of seats increases to at least 815. Expanding to an 815-seat grid alters the gender math. The 33% quota now yields 279 female MPs. But notice the hidden incumbent math. Despite this massive influx of women, the absolute seats available for men actually increases, climbing from 469 up to 536. This trick neutralizes political pushback. By expanding the total capacity, the state ensures that no existing faction has to sacrifice a single incumbent seat to make room for the quota. The mandated delay in the women's reservation acts as a structural buffer. It allows male politicians to support female representation without yielding their own territorial power. Solving the internal gender math is only half the equation. The government must also allocate these hundreds of new seats geographically, a prospect that has deeply alarmed India's southern states. To quell these fears, the Union Home Minister offered explicit political assurances, stating that the upcoming delimitation will not harm the South. The public promise relies on a uniform 50% absolute seat increase. Under this model, every state grows. Kerala goes from 20 seats to 30, and Tamil Nadu from 39 to 59. But this uniform political promise immediately collides with Article 81 of the Indian Constitution. Article 81 imposes a strict mathematical mandate. To ensure democratic fairness, the ratio of population to seats must be identical across all states, equal population per seat. Since 1976, Parliament has operated under a freeze based on the 1971 census. This was a deliberate guarantee to southern states that they would not be penalized for successfully implementing population control. Over the last 5 decades, population growth has diverged. Northern states like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar multiplied significantly, while southern populations largely stabilized. Consider this balancing scale, weighing Uttar Pradesh's population against Kerala's. A flat 50% increase to both states violates equal population per seat. Relying on modern census data forces an uneven distribution, meaning high-growth northern states must absorb the majority of newly created seats. This exposes the difference between having absolute seats and holding proportional power. Influence in Parliament is determined by your percentage of the total House, not the raw number of MPs you send. Even if Kerala gains 10 absolute seats, the total size of the Lok Sabha outpaces them. Their proportional weight drops from 3.6% of a 543-seat House down to just 2.5% of an 850-seat House. The promise of a 50% increase is an illusion. It relies on the comfort of higher absolute numbers to obscure the permanent dilution of southern states' voting power and influence. Beyond political maneuvering and federal influence, expanding the legislative branch places a massive, recurring financial burden on the country. There is a common misconception that Indian MPs are relatively inexpensive to maintain, usually supported by pointing to their modest base salary. This chart breaks down the actual individual cost. It starts with a monthly base salary of 50,000 rupees, but that base is immediately supplemented by monthly additions, a 45,000 rupee constituency allowance, and another 45,000 rupees for office expenses. Then we must factor in operational costs that dwarf salaries, daily session allowances, travel subsidies, and premium housing in Delhi's highly constrained Lutyens zone. When you calculate the total individual burden, maintaining a single MP costs the state exchequer roughly 4.29 crore rupees annually. To find the immediate cost of the Lok Sabha expansion, multiply that 4.29 crore by the 272 new MPs. That single action generates an additional public expenditure of 1,171 crore rupees every single year. Historically, expanding the Lok Sabha has created a structural pressure to increase the size of state assemblies proportionally. Projections suggest this expansion would require the addition of roughly 2,000 brand new members of legislative assemblies, or MLAs, nationwide. Factoring in state-level salaries and operational expenses, the combined addition of these new MPs and MLAs creates a projected expenditure surge between 5,000 and 9,000 crore rupees annually. The multi-billion rupee annual drain on the public exchequer creates a permanent financial legacy that far outweighs the one-time cost of building a new parliament. We return to the initial question: is this expansion an essential democratic upgrade or an expensive political compromise? The full implications of delimitation appear when we merge the data on gender representation, federal balance, and economic cost. Linking the women's quota to future delimitation allowed the government to bypass internal resistance by ensuring every current legislator kept their seat. But this internal political harmony requires a severe external trade-off. It sacrifices the proportional federal balance, punishing states that successfully stabilized their populations, and it leaves the public saddled with thousands of crores in new recurring expenditures just to financially support this expanded, protected political class. The appeal of more seats for everyone is a highly effective narrative, but evaluating this legislation requires looking past the absolute numbers. Shifts in proportional power and the long-term burden on the public purse are the ultimate metrics of this reform, regardless of how many new chairs are added to the room.